Welcome back. I'll first play PM Carney's clip where he's talking about the tariffs. Then I'll play what Trump has to say about it. And at the end, I'll give my complete conclusion.
Hi, question for the Prime Minister, Matthew Scates, the Globe and Mail. Going off a rough translation from an earlier question, you say funding requirements for the streamer's decision wasn't connected to Washington, but it was an irritant for Washington and a change the Trump administration wanted. Your government has capitulated on revenue splitting for Gordie Howe Bridge, digital service tax, and removing funding for American streamers. What has Canada gotten in return for these concessions?
Well, let's do a couple of things. Sorry, I'm going to do a little premise surgery for your question. Let's be clear about the bridge. The bridge, first off, the bridge is open. Bridge is open in a region, a narrow economic region that has $300 billion of economic activity that goes across land connections between the United States and largely the province of Ontario. $300 billion of economic activity. $6.5 billion cost of that bridge. A agreement that's less than 5% of that amount, less than 5% of that amount, that is then reinvested in economic support for that economic activity to enhance that economic activity. So we put that in perspective. That's being pragmatic and moving forward. And we got a bridge that's open. We've got opportunities open. And in terms of where we are as a country, we still have the lowest tariff rate of any country on an average basis. We still have north of 80% of our trade, 85 as we speak today, but north of 80% of our trade is tariff-free with the United States. And we're engaged in discussions with them. Now, we're engaged with discussions, working to have a more permanent or more stable is a better way to put it. Nothing's permanent, but a more stable relationship, trading relationship with the U.S. That addresses issues in some of our largest industries. And that recognizes the new U.S. approach to trade. So we're starting from a strong position. And I'm going to go back to one other thing, and I'll head back, which I said at my prepared remarks. And we're stronger than we were when this started. We are stronger than we were when this started. We're growing jobs twice the rate of the U.S. Our FDI is twice the rate of our nearest competitor. That's the United States. It's twice the rate of the U.S. We're the best country in the world judged for infrastructure investment. We're focused on the right things: affordable housing, community, becoming an energy superpower, diversifying. Everybody wants to do more with Canada, except the United States. Everyone wants to do more with Canada. So we're engaged in all these trade negotiations, and we're delivering them, and we're on track to have free trade access to 3 billion consumers. That's what we got.
Follow-up?
On the streaming decision, how should Canadians interpret that decision when Minister LeBlanc and Canadian officials are at an event yesterday co-sponsored?
We made that decision 2 months ago. That's how they should. We made that decision with a focus on affordability right out of the gate. It's not the time. Canadians are under. Sorry, I should let you finish your question. You finish your question. But Canadians have been under great pressure since COVID from overall inflation, price of groceries, housing costs, price most recently because of the war in Iran, price of energy. And we have taken, as other governments have, but we have taken a series of decisions. First thing we did was to cut the consumer carbon tax. First thing we did after the election was to cut income taxes for 22 million Canadians. We cut GST for first-time home buyers up to $1 million. We implemented pro-competitive decisions in broadband. People didn't notice it, but last summer we made a pro-competitive decision in broadband. We went along with the CRTC in that case because it improved competition and has helped reinforce the fall in broadband prices. But when we see costs increase because of a decision from the federal family, broadly speaking, arm's length regulator, but from the federal family, for something that, most Canadians have one or two or so of these streamers, and it's real money. This stuff adds up. And there's a better way to do it. We took the judgment there was a better way to do it, made the investment in culture, and we'll give the direction accordingly. It's that focus on affordability. Sorry.
Can you say what we're getting in return from the U.S. right now in terms of the trade negotiations? We have these lists of things that are happening right now.
The best trade deal
ever since the presidency of the late, great Ronald Reagan, who in all fairness, who I liked, but he did allow our cars to disappear into Japan and other locations. We cannot do it. We love him. But on trade, Trump is much better, much better. Well, as a country, we're building more auto factories and more plants than at any time in the history of our country. And someday the fake news is going to be writing stories about it. They don't like to write those stories. That's why they call them the fake news. But for decades, the auto workers and manufacturers of this great state were sold out and betrayed by globalist politicians and corrupt special interests who let other countries steal your jobs, pillage your factories, and loot the crown jewels of American industry from Detroit and all over our country. They were ripping us off, not only in the auto business, but in many other businesses. Every president before me promised to stop it, but none of them did anything. They did nothing. But now, at long last, Michigan finally has a president who stands up for Michigan auto workers and puts America first. You know, you had a leader, I don't know if he's still with you, Sean Fain or something. This guy was bad news. I never spoke to him, never saw him. He was a Democrat. He thought that Biden or Kamala would be wonderful. You would have, Mary, I hate to say it, you wouldn't have an auto industry right now if they got elected. You wouldn't have an auto industry. But I don't know what happened to the guy. Somebody said he got fired, but I can tell you, the people that count, those people love Trump. Because I've done more for you than your parents, okay? Your parents are good. I'm not going to knock your parents, but I have been better to you than your parents. That I can tell you, and they would agree with me. Wherever they may be, they would agree. Today, I'm proud to say that the auto industry is back, and America is back, and it's pulling Detroit and Michigan along with it. Our country is so successful, it's pulling it along, but you have some great representatives that are going to become governor, senator, congressman, women, but you have some great people. I'm going to mention them in a second, because under Sleepy Joe Biden, hold it. What's better, Sleepy Joe Biden or Crooked Joe Biden? Let's go. Sleepy Joe Biden, Crooked Joe Biden. They're both true. They're both very true. The United States had the highest trade deficit ever recorded. So we had the worst trade deficit, and our country was losing more than $1 trillion a year on trade every single year, and it got worse and worse. And if they were in there now, that number would be close to $2 trillion. The trade deficit in automobiles was more than $300 billion annually. That means outside countries and companies were coming in and just robbing us blind. And it was causing tremendous problems for your jobs. But now all of that is changing because I placed historic tariffs on foreign producers and manufacturers, including a 25% tariff on foreign automobiles, something that no other president had the courage to ever do. He's a communist. He's a communist. Thank you. He's a communist. We're running against communists. Now, this is great. What's going on? But we're going to win very big. No, I didn't even hear the guy, I think. You see what they want to do? You see what they want to do? They want to take your houses. They want to do things that nobody's ever even thought of before. They want to take your money. They want to raise your tax up to 80%. I gave you the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, so we'll keep it that way. And I said this morning, they also want to fire the police. They don't want police and they don't want prisons anymore. I think that's a great idea. Does everybody like that idea? No police. They want no police and they want no prisons. Where are these people coming from? But I also put a 25% tariff on all foreign trucks. So I called Mary about a year ago, and I said, I hear that foreign trucks are killing us. He said, that's true. I said, congratulations. I'm going to put a 25% tariff on the foreign trucks. And you are doing a phenomenal business now with trucks. So they were killing us in trucks, and now we're killing them. My policy is simple. If you make your truck or your car in a foreign country, you have to pay for the privilege of sending it into our market and making a lot of money. But if you build in a factory in Michigan or someplace in our country and make your automobiles or trucks right here in America, you pay zero tax and zero tariff. You pay zero tariff. There are no tariffs. And we've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars for the country aside from it, but we keep a lot. As an example, Europe is being taken over by the Chinese cars. You know that, right? Mercedes-Benz is being absolutely decimated. BMW, good companies, decimated. Volkswagen, decimated. They don't do anything about it. We don't have, to the best of my knowledge, Mary, one Chinese car in the country. They have a 100% tariff, and our automakers are doing, I think, business like you've never done before, right? Right? You're doing more business, better business, bigger business than you've ever done before. In 18 months, we've slashed our trade deficit with China by the largest amount in history. Nobody can believe it. You know, if you get it down a half a point, it's a lot. We got our trade deficit down by 71%. 71%. Worldwide.
Thank you. Yes, and for the Prime Minister again, we're 3 weeks away until new President Trump's tariffs coming into effect. Are you willing to use Canadian energy as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations with the United States, yes or no?
We're 3 weeks away from the August deadline. My colleagues, Janice Charette, who's our chief trade negotiator, and Minister LeBlanc, the relevant minister, are both in Washington now, so they're engaging with their counterparts. Look, we will, first and foremost, we're engaged in those negotiations to look to find a mutually beneficial solution, and we're only going to accept a solution that works for Canadians. We have lots of options of what we would do if that's not there, both positive in terms of supporting the economy and also addressing other issues, but I'm not going to be drawn on what we're going to do. We're going to focus now on building towards an agreement if an agreement is possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have time for one last question.
The car companies are doing better than they've ever done. Many, many plants are being built all over the United States. They'll be opening them over the next year. Toyota just agreed to come in, move its entire operation out of Mexico and into the United States. They'll be opening, I guess, the largest plant in the world, somebody said, but all because of tariffs and because of me. All because of Trump.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Will Vassar with the Western Standard. This one's for the Prime Minister, and it kind of builds upon the last part of the previous question. But in Alberta, specifically talking about Alberta oil, to what degree does the risk of really inflaming the independent sentiment here weigh into that decision of whether or not to put Alberta oil on?
I think one of the things, let me answer this way. Thank you for following up with it. I wanted to give a broader answer to the way we're looking at the trade negotiations, but you're coming back to this core thing. It's important. Being a reliable supplier is important. Canadians are reliable. Canadians can be trusted. It's one of the things that you see in the world. We have many exports and commodities. One of the biggest commodities, arguably the best, is trust. People trust us. And so when you're a supplier of a key commodity, key service, you got to think really hard about not supplying. So that very much colors it. So look, this is incredibly diverse country, economy. We have many things we can do. First and foremost is to work towards an agreement. That's what we're going to do. But there's other things we can do if we needed to address the situation was there. And the issue you're raising that was raised previously, it's not. I don't see the value of doing. I mean, I can understand conceptually, but I don't see the value of it. So it doesn't enter in. I guess to put a fine point on the way you asked the question, the referendum, the calculate, that doesn't enter into the calculus. It's a bigger, it's a.
In 2026, GM increased truck and SUV production by 20%, and in the past 2 years, the company's invested $9 billion in bringing factories home to the USA. They're coming back home because, frankly, when they build here, there's no tariff. It's really not complicated. A lot of people don't understand that. They say, oh, what does it mean? They have no idea. They don't have a clue. But Mary understood it. Her whole group understood it, and they're coming back home where they belong. So I just want to congratulate General Motors.
That's the approach Canada's new government has taken from the start, working with every province and territory to build our strength at home and to diversify those partnerships abroad. And as a consequence of that, even though we've got a lot more to do, we're in a stronger position today than when the trade war began. We're now creating jobs at twice the rate of the United States. Canada's non-U.S. exports are up sharply. They're on track to double over the next decade. Foreign direct investment in Canada is at its highest level in 2 decades and running at twice the rate of our nearest G7 competitor. Canada now ranks as the most attractive country in the world for infrastructure investment, and we're just getting started. Building Red Deer strong, building Alberta strong.
But down in Mexico, and they're coming back, and production's moving from Mexico, and companies are actually moving production from Mexico back to America. Before they left, they went the other way. Now they're all coming back. Toyota, Hyundai, and others are relocating production back to the U.S. Ford is investing $3 billion to build parts of its new pickup truck in central Michigan. All these things I told you, but only Brian. Where's Brian? Come here. Get up here, Brian, will you please? He's the only guy that believed me. But boy, did he believe me. I wanted to just hop over. Come on, don't worry about it, Secret Service. He's okay. Come on up here, Brian. See the way he can do that? Look at that. He evaded. I'm sure they're thrilled. Come here, say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, we can thank this gentleman right here for all these jobs coming back, and I hear it all the time from all my connections at all the different auto plants around the Metro Detroit area. Jobs are coming back to America. You know, Kamala Harris was running against this guy when he ran for re-election. She wanted to get rid of the internal combustion engine, and crazy Sean Fain endorsed her. So we've got to change the mindset. We've got to build, if they want to sell in our market, they got to build it in our market. And that's what this guy...
We got together in PEI. You were there for several days. I was there for a couple of days. And together we focused on creating one Canadian economy, building our strength at home, and diversifying our trade partnerships abroad. And with respect to the first, on one Canadian economy, the federal government has implemented legislation that remove all of the federal barriers to internal trade, making it easier for Canadian workers, businesses, and products to move across this country. It's a legitimate question why there are any federal barriers to internal trade in Canada, but they're gone now. During our meeting last week, the premiers made new commitments to double our electricity grid. I'm sure Alberta will lead the way on that. Commitments to have more direct-to-consumer alcohol sales across the country. Alberta already does lead the way on that. And commitments to enable greater labor mobility so Canadians can work where they want. By working together, we're also advancing major infrastructure projects across Canada. In less than a year, more than 25 nation-building initiatives have been submitted to the Major Projects Office, which is job is to fast-track them. That represents $200 billion in investments to help Canada build bigger, move faster, and export more. We're also creating a trading network that's the envy of the world. Canada already enjoys preferential access to 1.5 billion consumers in economies that represent 2/3 of global GDP. We just concluded a new trade agreement with the UAE that was negotiated in a record 47 days. By the end of the year, we intend to double our market access to 3 billion consumers by concluding new agreements with the ASEAN countries, with India, Thailand, and the Philippines. Now, the people of Red Deer know the importance of good trade relationships. I'll give an example in agriculture. Alberta produces almost 1/3 of Canada's canola, this region at the heart of production. And that was top of mind a few months ago in January when we went to Beijing to secure a new deal with China that unlocked $3 billion in export opportunities for Canada's canola farmers. Nous consolidons
group of people, but for decades we were told that it was totally impossible to bring back American manufacturing. Obama would say it, remember? Barack Hussein Obama. He was so bad for the auto industry, I don't know, you know. Honestly, I don't know how you vote for Democrats because they are so bad for the industry. But it turned out that all you really needed to get him back was a new president, somebody that understood business, understood what it was all about. I've been complaining about it for many years. On day one, I ended Biden's insane electric vehicle mandate that would have crushed the U.S. auto industry forever, would have never come back. Remember that? Everybody was supposed to have an electric car within, 15 minutes. And I don't want to say this in front of Mary because she'll change your mind, but it takes far fewer people to build an electric car. That doesn't mean they work better, but it takes, and if you want an electric car, they make electric cars too. But if you want to buy a combustion, if you want to buy anything you want, they make. We don't want to do that stuff, but right now we've been right on that bet. I said, no, it's not going to happen that way. I terminated Biden's disastrous cafe fuel standards. You know what that is? That was a short road to bankruptcy for every single car company in this country and a total disaster that would have killed the internal combustion. And thanks to our Republican majorities in Congress, we also made interest on auto loans fully tax deductible, but only if the car is made. It's being broken. All these records that are coming out, not only in your business, we're leading in AI. We're beating China in AI. Nobody expected that. We're building more plants than anybody in the world. And frankly, the businesses are all moving. Many of these businesses, they left here and they went to foreign countries. They went to Germany. They went to Mexico and Canada. They went to Japan. They went to South Korea, car businesses, a lot of businesses. And now they're coming back home with it, are leading the way. And I'm so proud of it because, as Brian and others in the room know, I fought for this for years. I was here 25 years ago. I got Man of the Year. By the way, the press questioned that, and then they found out it was true, actually. And I made a speech, and all I talked about was, why are you letting them steal your auto industry? I said, your auto industry is being stolen. It's going to Germany and Mexico and Japan and South Korea and Canada. Why are you letting it happen? They stole over 50%. It's all coming back. Who would think it's all coming back? It's all coming back. It's been pretty amazing, actually.
The Federal Reserve is meeting this week. They've not hit the inflation target set. They've not hit the 2%. There are some bets.
They had a very good inflation report the other day.
Are you worried that they might?
Costs are going down rapidly. Don't forget, I inherited these. I haven't been here very long. I inherited the worst inflation in history from Biden. But costs are going down rapidly. And as soon as the war is over, you're going to see a big drop.
Are you worried that the Fed's going to hike rates to counter inflation?
Well, I have a board, and Kevin's fantastic, but he's got a board, and the board members are very political, I would say. So we fight our way through the race because we're doing so well. But no, he's got a board. He wants to do the right thing. I know what he wants to do, but you need the consent of some people that have perhaps bad intentions. Rates should be lowered. This country could be at 8%, 9%, 10%, 12% GDP. That's what it should be. We have other countries that are paying less interest rates, and if it wasn't for us, they wouldn't even exist. It's ridiculous. And they call them elite. We have other countries, I don't want to really mention names of countries, but I could give you plenty, that they take money out of the U.S., and because of that, they get a lower interest rate than we do. And it shouldn't be that way. We should have the lowest interest rate in the world. I could take the money that these countries are making, put it into our portfolio, and we should have the lowest interest rate in the world, like it used to be 30 years ago. We always made the lowest rate. If you take a look at like Switzerland, where we have a $30 billion deficit, I could wipe out that deficit overnight. That'd be money that would actually indirectly come to us. Under our leadership, investment is booming, incomes are rising, and the stock market has 73 all-time highs. Think of that. In a year and a half, we've had an all-time high. And your 401ks are up by $32,000 and more in just a year. And one statistic that I say, because, you know, the fake news, the reason they're fake news, they're terrible people in many cases, not in all cases, you have some professionals, but they refuse to say there are more Americans working today in the United States of America than at any time in history. How about that? That's, to me, that's a stat that's hard to beat. And it was just announced that inflation is dropping at the fastest rate in more than 6 years. We're dropping it. You know, I inherited this mess. I inherited an open border where 25 million people came in. Many of these people were criminals, murderers, people from jails, people from mental institutions. I inherited that. We've got a lot of them out, and we're getting a lot of them out. We have 11,888 are murderers, many of whom, they say more than 50% of whom killed more than one person. We don't want them in this country. They allowed them to come in through the stupid open border. They came in like water, you've seen it. And right now, it was just announced, again, this is now the 15th month in a row, 0 people have come through our border illegally, 0. But it all started, you know, I won the election. We won in a landslide, by the way, and won this state so big. You know, this is always a hard state. I don't know why it's hard to win, but it seems to be for Republicans, but it probably won't be anymore. We have great candidates. But, you know, it's really amazing. They always try and blame me for high prices. I have my first news conference. I win. I have a news conference like a day later. And I say, any questions? Why are prices so high? You have to understand. I just got there. They say eggs. I remember eggs. Eggs were like 4 or 5 times higher than they were a few years ago. You couldn't get eggs. They wanted me to use plastic eggs for the Easter egg hunt because they were unable to get eggs. And I said, we'll take care of it, and we got it taken care of quickly. Now eggs are much lower than they were when we first started. And that's true with everything else. And you'll see how true it's going to be after we get rid of the nuclear threat of Iran, which will be very quickly. But I had nothing to do with it. You know, they have this term. So here I am. I'm one day in office, and the fake news goes, affordability, affordability. I said, what's affordability? What's that all about? Prices are too high. I said, I'm here for less than 24 hours. But we've brought down prices. Last week, it was announced that inflation's gone down faster than at any time in the last 6 years. When the fuel comes down, which it did for a little while, then they didn't behave, and I had to go back, and now they're behaving again. You know, it's like playing a banjo. But every day we're fighting to put more money in your pockets, and that's what we're doing, and we're doing it better than anyone. At the same time, we're making this country safe, because we're not going to let lunatics have a nuclear weapon. You want to see disruption? You want to see some disruption? But with the help of our Republican majorities in Congress, I proudly signed the largest tax cuts in American history for the second time, because in my first term, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We got hit with COVID at the end, but we did a great job in that. Operation Warp Speed and the whole thing. We did a great job. Didn't get credit, but that's okay. But we had the greatest economy in the history of the country, and we're blowing it away this time. We're blowing it away. You're going to see the results very soon. I'm a little bit upset because in 2.5 years, you may have a different president. May. And that president will be saying how great the economy is doing. Look at all the jobs that he produced. We have more factories being built than at any time in our country's history. They're all going to be opening now and soon. And I got some guy or woman who is going to take credit for that. Will you please remember that I did it, okay? I did it. I did it. 18 months ago, we inherited a catastrophe from the Biden and from the radical left Democrats. They created the worst inflation in 48 years, wide open borders with millions and millions of people from mental institutions, insane asylums, the world's worst prisons pouring into our country from all over the world. They came. They came from South America. They came from the Congo. They came from places from all over the world. We had transgender for everybody, men playing in women's sports, crime ravaging our cities, and the whole world was laughing at us as a stupid nation. They called us a stupid nation. But they're not laughing anymore. America is respected again, I think, like we've never been respected before. You saw I went to the G20, I went to the G7, I went wherever we go, they're looking at us as the real leader again. For a long time that hadn't taken place. Under our leadership, we're making the largest ever investment in the United States Armed Forces. And right here in Michigan, I got 21 new F-15EX Eagle IIs for Selfridge Air National Guard Base, ensuring that Michigan stays at the cutting edge of North American air power. Selfridge was very, very important. It's a big deal. It was closed. It was over. It was going to be closed. Now it's open. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world by far. We have the greatest people. We have the best equipment in the world. I built it during my first term, and I'm using it now. We had no choice. Again, we can't let what was happening in Venezuela go on, and I was very decisive, but we can't let what was and is going on. They killed 52,000 protesters. Think of it in a 4-month period. 52,000 in Iran. But we've already paid for the Venezuela operation, as I said, and likewise we're winning big time with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we're ensuring that they never have a nuclear weapon. When somebody comes up and says, why are we doing this? Just say, because we cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. That's all you have to say. There's nothing else you have to say. If you understood the power of the nuclear weapons, you'd understand exactly what I was saying. When I took office, we inherited the worst border in U.S. history, but we quickly turned it into the most secure border in the history of our country by far. And in the past 14 months, a number that's not even believable, but it is what it is. It's published every month. A historic record of 0 illegal aliens have been admitted into the United States. 0. And now, as you've been reading, crime is plummeting nationwide. Last year, we achieved the largest drop in the murder rate ever recorded to the lowest level in 125 years, 1900. That's before my father. Bring up my father. That's before my father was born. 125 years, lowest murder rate. And that's despite the fact that we have people in this country that shouldn't be here. That's despite that. But a lot of them are being brought out very rapidly. Under my most favored nation policy on drug prices, we're delivering the largest prescription drug price cuts in the history of our country by far, with differences of 400, 500, and even 600%. Nobody can believe it. We were the highest priced for decades, the highest priced in the world for drugs, prescription drugs, and now we're the lowest price in the world. So you think that was, I won't bore you with the way I did it, but no other president was able to do it. I'm not sure they even tried, but all of you have to go out and go to trumprx.gov, trumprx.gov, and you're going to find that you're going to buy whatever you're looking for at a tiny fraction of what you were paying. To stop the massive theft of taxpayer dollars, we ended Medicaid for illegal immigrants, and we launched the war on fraud, led by our great Vice President, J.D. Vance. It's having a tremendous, we're finding unbelievable levels of fraud. Minnesota, that governor is so crooked. Ilhan Omar with her brother, so crooked. But it's all under very serious investigation. We're finding billions of dollars, billions. In just 18 months, we've turned this country completely around, and it's still, we're going to do still better, but we have a turn. We're hot. Jobs are up inflation is down, our border is secure, factories are opening at record levels, investment is booming, Michigan is thriving, America is winning like never. I think he's done a great job. We've pretty much destroyed their military. They want to meet, and we're meeting. We'll see what happens. There's a chance we could make a deal.
Let's break down a split screen you don't usually get to see side by side. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump describing the exact same trade relationship in completely opposite terms. Carney says Canada holds the best hand, the lowest tariffs, the calmest strategy. Trump says his tariffs are winning, dragging factories back to America, and that countries like Canada stole the auto industry. They can't both be fully right. So who is? Here's the frame. Trump's pitch is economic nationalism. Tariffs punish foreign producers, bring jobs home, and fix a system he says cheated America. Carney's pitch is calm confidence. Canada's diversified, mostly tariff-free with the U.S. under their trade deal, and negotiating from strength. A fair check separates the claims that hold up from the ones that don't, on both sides, because each man is mixing solid facts with political spin. So set the two lenses side by side. Trump's lens says tariffs are a tool that forces production back to America and makes foreign countries pay. Carney's lens says Canada is insulated, diversified, and better off standing firm than caving. This breakdown checks each against how tariffs and trade actually work, not the applause lines. 1. Ground rule. Trade economics is where confident slogans meet stubborn arithmetic, so we'll keep it factual and fair to both leaders. We're not here to tell you tariffs are genius or disaster or that Canada is winning or losing. We're checking what's verifiable, who actually pays a tariff, what the trade numbers mean, and whether the specific claims each man made are true. The goal is clarity, not a flag to wave. Start with what's genuinely true on both sides, because there's more than the fight suggests. Both leaders are standing on some solid ground. Trump is right that America lost a lot of manufacturing jobs over decades, and that some of it moved abroad. That's real, and it hurt real communities. Carney is right that Canada and the U.S. run one of the largest, most integrated trading relationships on Earth, and that most of it flows with low or no tariffs under their trade agreement. Those two facts aren't in conflict. They're the setup for everything else. And both men agree on the stakes, even if they'd never say it the same way. The U.S. and Canada trade well over $500 billion a year. Their auto industries are wired together across the border, and their energy markets are deeply linked. When two economies are this entangled, a trade war isn't a clean fight. It's more like an argument between business partners who can't easily walk away. Keep that in mind as the claims fly. Now the biggest fact check of all, and it decides how you hear everything else. Who actually pays a tariff? Here's the single most important point, and it's not really disputed among economists. A tariff is a tax collected at the border, and it is paid by the domestic company importing the goods, not by the foreign country. So when the claim is that foreign nations are handing over money, the mechanics say otherwise. The check is written by an American importer, who usually passes some of that cost on to American consumers through higher prices. That's the arithmetic, whoever you voted for. But be fair to the deeper argument, because it's more sophisticated than the slogan. The serious case for tariffs isn't that foreigners pay, it's that by making imports more expensive, you shift production and buying toward domestic factories, accepting higher prices now for more homegrown industry later. That's a real defensible strategy with real costs. So Trump's tariffs can genuinely pull some production home. The misleading part is only the claim that other countries, not Americans, foot the bill. And do factories actually come back? The honest answer is some do, and it's slower and costlier than the speeches suggest. When Trump points to a company moving a plant to the U.S., those announcements are often real. But economists who study it find the net effect is mixed, because tariffs also raise costs for American manufacturers who import parts and invite retaliation that hurts American exporters. You can have real factory wins and real hidden losses in the very same policy. On the specific auto tariffs Trump cited, a 25% tax on foreign cars and trucks, the logic is straightforward and the trade-off is too. It genuinely pressures automakers to build in the U.S. to avoid the tax, which is the point. It also raises the price of a lot of vehicles Americans buy, and it strains the North American supply chain where parts cross the border many times before a car is finished. Both the incentive and the cost are real. Now Carney's side, is Canada really holding the best hand? Carney leaned on a few concrete claims. He said Canada has one of the lowest average tariff rates, and that north of 80% of Canada's trade with the U.S. is tariff-free. Under the North American Trade Agreement, the two countries share. That's broadly accurate. The vast majority of cross-border goods have long moved without tariffs. So when Carney says the baseline relationship is mostly duty-free, he's on solid factual ground, whatever new tariffs are being threatened on top. His bolder line, the best trade deal in the world right now, is where fact turns into salesmanship. There's no objective scoreboard that crowns a single best deal, so that's a confidence play aimed at his own public and at Washington, not a measurable fact. It's the diplomatic equivalent of refusing to look worried. Reading it as spin isn't an insult. It's just recognizing a leader projecting strength during a live negotiation. He also claimed Canada is stronger than when the trade war began, growing jobs at twice the U.S. rate, with foreign investment at a two-decade high. Those are his government's figures, and snapshots like that can be cherry-picked by any leader, so treat the exact numbers with caution. But the underlying strategy he described, diversifying away from dependence on one customer, is a genuinely rational response when your biggest trading partner turns unpredictable. The strategy is sound even if the scoreboard is spun. And that diversification is real, not just rhetoric. Carney pointed to new access to markets beyond the U.S., a deal in the Gulf, and unlocking canola exports to China. Whether Canada can truly replace the American market, its neighbor, largest customer, and the destination for most of its exports, is far harder than a press conference line makes it sound. Diversifying is smart and slow. It softens the blow of a trade war, but it can't quickly substitute for the U.S. Now the sharpest accusation: Trump's claim that Canada and others stole the auto industry. Trump named Canada directly, saying the American auto industry was stolen by Germany, Mexico, Japan, South Korea, and Canada. Here's the fuller picture. For decades, under trade agreements the U.S. itself signed, North America built one integrated auto industry on purpose, with parts and vehicles crossing the U.S.-Canada border freely and repeatedly. Calling that theft is a framing choice. A car assembled in Canada is often full of American parts, and vice versa. It was designed to be shared, not stolen. But give the grievance its due, because it isn't empty. Some auto production did move to lower-cost locations over the years, and specific American plants and towns genuinely lost out. Workers who felt abandoned by those decisions have a real complaint, and pretending otherwise is how elites lost their trust in the first place. The honest version is that integration created winners and losers, and Trump is speaking for the losers even when the word stolen oversimplifies how it happened. Now, a number Trump uses constantly, and almost always misframes: the trade deficit. Trump talks about trade deficits as if they're money being stolen or lost, citing figures in the hundreds of billions. Here's the correction. A trade deficit just means a country buys more goods from a partner than it sells to them. It's not a debt, and it's not money handed over. Americans get real cars, oil, and lumber for those dollars. A deficit can reflect a strong consumer economy as easily as a weak one, and treating it as a scoreboard of winning and losing is where the framing breaks down. That said, don't overcorrect into pretending deficits never matter. Persistent imbalances can reflect real problems like hollowed-out industries or unfair foreign practices, and it's fair to want to address those. The mistake is the simple story that a deficit equals losing and a surplus equals winning. The truth is messier. It depends on why the imbalance exists and what a country does with the money it earns. Trump names a real concern and then wraps it in a misleading scoreboard. And one more front that could decide it all: energy. A reporter pressed Carney on whether Canada would weaponize its oil, cutting off supply to pressure the U.S. Carney refused, saying being a reliable supplier is itself Canada's most valuable asset, that trust is a commodity, and he doesn't see the value in not supplying. This is strategically shrewd and worth understanding. Canada is a huge energy supplier to the U.S., and a reputation for reliability is worth more over the long run than one dramatic act of leverage that customers never forget. So step back. Who's actually winning this? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Both men are, in part, performing for their own voters. Trump projects that tariffs are already forcing the world to bend, because strength and winning are his brand. Carney projects unbothered calm and the best deal in the world, because a leader who looks rattled loses at home and at the table. A live negotiation with a real August deadline sits underneath all of it, and neither side is going to reveal its actual bottom line on camera. And that's why you should distrust any clean scoreboard from either of them. The real outcome won't be a press conference line. It'll be the terms of whatever deal or no deal emerges from the negotiations happening quietly in Washington. Tariffs up or down, autos in or out, energy on the table or off, those specifics are the story. The confidence and the bravado are just the music playing while the actual bargaining happens off stage. A few facts that make this fight a lot clearer than the podium lines. Start with an irony worth naming. The current North American trade agreement, the one keeping most U.S.-Canada trade tariff-free, was renegotiated and signed by Trump himself in his first term, and he called it a fantastic deal at the time. So the threatened new tariffs sit on top of a framework the president already negotiated. That doesn't make the tariffs wrong, but it complicates the story that the old deals were pure betrayal. He owns a big piece of the current one. Next, remember that trade wars go both ways. When the U.S. puts tariffs on Canadian goods, Canada typically answers with tariffs on American goods, targeting politically sensitive exports like farm products. That retaliation hits American farmers and manufacturers who sell to Canada, one of their biggest customers. So the pain isn't one-directional. A tariff aimed outward tends to boomerang onto some Americans, which is why these fights are so hard to simply win. Now make the cost concrete, because it's easy to keep abstract. Tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, and lumber flow into the price of vehicles, homes, appliances, and groceries. The bill is spread thinly across millions of shoppers, so no single person feels robbed, but in total it's a real transfer from consumers toward protected industries and the government collecting the tax. That diffuse, invisible cost is exactly why the who pays question matters so much. And here's the catch inside the jobs promise. Even when a factory does come home, a modern plant is heavily automated, so it often employs a fraction of the workers the old factories did. Reshoring can genuinely rebuild industrial capacity, which matters for security and resilience, while still delivering fewer jobs than the nostalgic image suggests. Both things are true, and a fair account of tariffs has to hold the win and the asterisk together. On energy, the interdependence is deeper than most Americans realize. Canada is the single largest source of U.S. oil imports, and many U.S. refineries are specifically built to process the heavy crude that Canada supplies. That's why Carney's refusal to weaponize oil is shrewd, and why threatening Canadian energy is double-edged. The two countries aren't just trading partners here. They're plumbed into each other's energy systems in ways that can't be swapped out quickly. A word on history in both directions. Skeptics love to invoke the disastrous tariff wars of the 1930s, and that caution is legitimate. But today's targeted tariffs are a different, more surgical tool than a blanket wall, so the past is a warning, not a verdict. The honest lesson from history isn't that tariffs always fail. It's that broad, retaliatory tariff spirals have gone badly before, and that's the risk to watch, not a guarantee. Finally, follow the domestic clocks, because they explain the volume. Trump supporters reward toughness and the promise that someone is finally fighting for American factories, so projecting dominance is good politics for him. Carney leads a country that deeply dislikes being pushed around by its giant neighbor, so refusing to look intimidated is good politics for him. Much of what sounds like strategy is also each man playing to the crowd he most needs to keep. Before we close, the strongest, fairest version of each man's case. Give Trump his strongest case. For decades, both parties in Washington accepted factory closures and offshoring as the price of cheap goods, and a lot of working Americans paid that price while being told it was progress. Using tariffs to force a rethink, to say that access to the world's biggest consumer market is a privilege with conditions, is a legitimate strategy, not lunacy. The costs are real, but so is the problem he's responding to. Give Carney his strongest case too. When a much larger neighbor turns your trade relationship unpredictable, panicking is the worst move. Staying calm, protecting your credibility, and quietly building other options is exactly what a steady leader should do. Refusing to weaponize energy, insisting any deal must actually work for your own citizens, and diversifying your customers is patient, rational statecraft. It's less dramatic than tariffs, and it may age better. And notice the shared reality under the rival slogans. Both leaders know these two economies need each other, both are negotiating rather than truly cutting ties, and both are talking tough mainly because that's what their voters want to hear. The theater is loud, the underlying relationship is quietly durable. When the cameras are off, the negotiators are still in the room, which tells you more than any soundbite about how this ends. So let's total it up honestly. Here's the fair scorecard. Tariffs are paid by Americans, not foreign countries. though they can still pull some production home at a cost. Trump's deficit as losing framing is misleading, but the lost factories grievance underneath it is real. Carney's claim that most U.S.-Canada trade is tariff-free holds up. His best deal in the world line is salesmanship. And the auto industry wasn't stolen so much as shared, with real winners and losers along the way. So where does it leave us? With two leaders telling their own people the story that flatters them, both anchored to a few real facts and floating a few convenient ones. The truth is that a trade war between deeply linked neighbors has no clean winner. It has prices, trade-offs, and a negotiation. Anyone selling you a simple scoreboard in Washington or Ottawa is selling you the show, not the substance. Watch three things from here. First, the August tariff deadline and whether it produces a deal, an extension, or an escalation. Second, whether promised factories actually open at scale or stay press releases. And third, whether Canada's diversification that deals with the Gulf and China meaningfully reduces its dependence on the U.S. or mostly softens the blow. Those outcomes, not the podium lines, will tell you who was right. Because in the end, a trade war isn't settled by who sounds most confident at a microphone. It's settled in tariff schedules, supply chains, and the prices you actually pay, the slow, unglamorous arithmetic that outlasts every soundbite. That's where we'll keep watching. That is our breakdown. Stay with us.